for any kind of imposter, said Francis Bacon a long, long time ago as a philosopher. So it's that desire to seek out the truth, seek out more information, patience to have the opportunity to say, why is this? And question. That fondness to meditate. Sometimes you just have to let things kind of marinate overnight, or maybe that you let them marinate while you go to lunch and then you come back to it with a fresh perspective. Slowness to assert, meaning we really need to slow down when we're dealing with issues that require complex critical thinking. We can't do it hastily, or we may come up with a conclusion that is going to derail us down the road. Readiness to consider, that's the what are the opportunities, the what if question, right? That belly of curiosity. Carefulness to dispose and set in order. So we don't want to discount something because, well, that's too innovative, or that's too hard, or there's no budget for that. If it's a really great idea, it may have traction. And then hatred for any kind of imposter, being able to really seek out those bits of information, that data that isn't credible, reliable, or trustworthy. To be able to do that early on in the process, so you don't put forth a recommendation and roll it out and realize, oh no, I should have been a little more attuned to this. So what really happens with critical thinking is we get in our own way. We have information, it could be actual data, depending on what the source is. If your agency, your organization considers it credible and reliable or not. But we believe things are true because I believe it. If I believe it, it must be true. Therefore, I go into solving a problem with that baggage. I believe it's true, or it's true because I don't have time to consider other options. Deadlines, timelines, someone breathing down your neck, I need this now. That gets in the way of us being critical thinkers. It's true because I have always believed it. Some stereotype that you bring, it could be a bias that is just inherent. You don't even know you have it. Being in check with that can help us to be a better critical thinker. It's true because I want to believe it. Like, this will make my life easier, so it must be the solution to the problem. I want to believe it, therefore it must be true. That can get you in trouble too. It's true because it is in my selfish interest to believe it. This new procedure might make my department's job really easy, but wait till it gets to accounting, right? Oh my goodness. That probably isn't your best solution unless you've involved them in the process and put on that critical thinking hat. It's true because it's the only option. I would say that it's never the only option. There are always multiple options if we hit the pause button and brainstorm and get creative, thinking outside the box. It's true because other options are stupid. This would be intolerance, maybe a bit of arrogance that can sneak its way into your thinking. And then it's true because we believe it. That is probably one of the more common misnomers that derail critical thinking, because it must be true because we believe it. Everyone else might not believe it, but if we believe it, why do we believe it? You've got to be able to answer the whys. So the 3 tips that I'm going to give you today are, and this is really a preview of the different critical thinking classes that we have. First, control what you can. You can't control everything, even if you're a control freak. Control what you can. Be proactive. It's a completely different way to operate than if you get into reactive mode, which can then send you into crisis mode. And then think differently. Ask why and what if. So some tips to control what you can. These are the things that get in our way, the complexity of the problem. How long is it? What deadline is looming? Maybe my ego, maybe I've solved this problem before and it didn't work, so I'm a little bit crushed, right? My ego is crushed. What bias do we have? Is there intolerance in there? Is there peer pressure that is getting in the way? So how do you control what you can? You have to own it. I go back to my kids all play sports, and football coach who, you know, the defensive coordinator for my son's football team, they lose a game. He says, it's on me. He's not out there playing the game, but he owns it. If I would have prepared you better, if I would have put in the right calls, if I would have given you the tools you needed to be successful, he owns it. We need to own it more when we're making complex, critical choices. Create a plan. You know, they say a goal without a plan is just a hallucination, right? Just wishful thinking. Create a plan on how you're going to get there. If you've got a big problem, when's the deadline? Back it out, put those benchmarks in place, and have a plan so you can control what you can. If they move the goalpost on you, you might have to create a new plan, but still have a plan. Don't leave it to chance. And then get after it. When you decide to solve a complex problem, go in, go deep, and go hard, right? Get after it. Get on that problem. Make it a priority. You may have to block off time to focus on that issue. It will be worth it because you can get focused and you can get critical without having all these other factors intercede. We need to aspire to be a thinker, a more critical thinker. Critical thinkers have some characteristics that uncritical thinkers don't have. Here's a few that I've come up with for critical thinkers. They acknowledge what they don't know. It's okay to say, I don't know. But then the follow-up is, I'll find out, right? I don't know, but I'll find out. I don't know, but I'll get back to you. Not, I don't know, right? And the body language is like eye roll and everything. Critical thinkers see problems as exciting challenges. They're like, yeah, let me have some of this. They strive to understand, which means they actually listen to the other points of view. They use evidence. It's not just hearsay. It's not just this might be a possible solution. They actually make evidence-based decisions. They're interested in other views and other ideas. In fact, the critical thinker actually explores those other ideas and seeks them out. I think it makes you a much smarter person. And then they recognize that extreme views are seldom correct. That's a big deal. Could you imagine if our society did more of all of this? So what is an uncritical thinker? Uncritical thinkers pretend they know more than they do, right? Fake it till you make it. It works for some things, not with critical thinking. Uncritical thinkers see controversial issues as threats to their ego. They're impatient with complexity. They get all anxious when things get too difficult rather than buckling down and pushing through. They judge on first impressions, not digging into the evidence or the info or gathering data, and they're preoccupied with themselves. They only entertain other views so they can counter those views. And they ignore the need for balance. So we want to aspire to be more of a critical thinker and less of an uncritical thinker. So ask questions. Ask lots of questions. In fact, ask open-ended questions. It will give you so much more information. I used to be a journalist, and I learned early on in my career that if I asked open-ended questions rather than yes and no, I got a wealth of information, and then I could ask a follow-up question. The same is true when you're dealing with a complex issue. Instead of saying, can we do this? And they say yes or no, and you're not much further ahead than you were. You say, tell me more about, help me understand. Those types of questions give you a wealth of information, and then you can sort through it as a critical thinker. Tip number 2, be proactive. If you're proactive, you don't have to be reactive. In fact, you don't have to get to the point where you just shake the magic 8 ball and say, I guess that's my decision because deadline here, I've got to move. It's a constant struggle between urgent and important. Being proactive takes planning and effort. So how do you do it? Some of you have probably seen the Covey Cube. I call it the Covey Cube. It's Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of highly effective people. It's an old book, but basically what it does is it takes things that are urgent and things that are important. So some things are very urgent and very important, right? I'll use my handy dandy new active pen here. So these are things that are in crisis. Oh, well, you're gonna have to fill in the lines there. Things that are in crisis mode, right? They're very important and they're very urgent. You have to deal with them. Then we have things that are very urgent, but not important. That bottom corner. This is our busy work, right? These things just keep us busy. They're easy to cross off our to-do list because they're urgent, but they're really not important. It makes us feel like we've gotten a lot done. Sorting through all your email. Urgent, not very important. I mean, the important ones are, but you can spend all day sorting through email, right? Then we have things, if you move over to the right, we have things that are not important and not urgent. Those get a big X. Don't do those. Where you want to focus as a critical thinker is in the square that is very important, but not yet urgent. Very important, but not yet urgent. That's where you have the opportunity to make a difference and to create a plan to solve your problem. You can gather data because you're not in a rush. The clock is not ticking. While it is important, it is not, I would say, not yet urgent. Because if you don't deal with it when it's not urgent, it's going to quickly move into the very important and very urgent column, which will force you to not think critically because you just have to get the information out. I was reading this morning the New York Times, and there's a story on vaccine distribution. And they were saying that those countries that contained the pandemic early on, or states, did so because they were very process oriented. They were used to going through a process in a methodical manner and dealing with complex projects or problems or jobs. And then as we went along over the last several weeks, many of those countries and states that were able to contain the pandemic early on, well, that's relative, right? They are really struggling now because they try to apply the process, this critical thinking mechanism, when the sense of urgency is overwhelming. And that forces people to make rash, fast, and sometimes not well thought out decisions. So if we deal with it when it's not urgent, but important, for instance, the vaccine rollout, we've known the vaccine was coming. So if we deal with it when it's not urgent, we have a chance to create a plan. So when it does become urgent, we can roll out the plan instead of move into crisis mode. Okay. What's next? Can it really be that difficult? I mean, take the peanut butter sandwich, right? There's only one way to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Just ask me. You have to put peanut butter on one side, and then you put the peanut butter on the other side, and then you put the jelly in the middle so it doesn't bleed through on to the bread. If you ask my husband, you put the peanut butter on one side, you put the jelly on the other side. Otherwise, it's not balanced. Some people put the jelly on both sides, and then they try to spread the peanut butter on the jelly. Some people are all about making it a piece of art. The point is, there are a lot of different ways to make a peanut butter jelly sandwich. No one is right or wrong, but we get into the mindset that the way I approach this problem is the only way. Important to acknowledge that there are different ways to tackle the same problem. That mindset alone will help you to be a better critical thinker because you'll seek out viewpoints that are different than yours. You'll seek out information that not only supports the solution that you're looking at, but brings evidence that other solutions might work better or also. Tip number 3, think differently. What if? Bring on the brainstorm. I know you don't have enough time to brainstorm. Revisit that. Brainstorming doesn't take a lot of time and it produces great results. And then the hacks, the 6 thinking hacks. That's the tool that we dive into in critical thinking tools. So the 9-dot problem, you've probably seen this. I'm going to give you a chance to try this on your own. If you want to make 9 dots on your paper, I want you to connect them with 4 lines without your pen leaving the paper. 4 lines without your pen leaving the paper. So, well, no, your pen can leave the paper. 4 lines that connect all the dots. Okay? So you could do this line, 1, 2, 3. No, that's not going to connect them all because you only have 3 lines. You could do it across this way. That's not going to do it. You could go diagonal, right? How can you do 4 lines to connect 9 dots? You have to think outside the box.
I'm going with does it have to be a straight line?
It does have to be a straight line, but I like your outside the box thinking. So for the sake of time, normally I would make you guys work through this. I'm just going to show you how it's done. It's a great activity for the family dinner tonight. So if you go outside the box and you do 1 line diagonal, oops, you do, oh, come on. Let's see here. Okay, you do 1 line diagonal. Oh, geez. Oh, gosh. See, every time I do this, I screw it up when I try to do it like this. Okay, you do, okay, let me erase here. Oh, my goodness. Okay, just a second. Erase. Starting over. I know, you guys are figuring it out. So I'm going to go outside the box. I'm going to go big. Come on. It will be worth the wait. Okay, I'm going to go outside the box. I'm going to go big, and then I'm going to go down. Oh, I got to start the other place. Okay, well, I'm just going to do this from here. I got to go down, and then I got to go up outside the box, and then I can get these 2 guys in, and then I come back here. See how that works? 4 lines, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, connects all 9 dots. But you have to go outside the box. You have to look at not what you have, but what you don't have. What's there, but what's beyond the edges. It's an example of critical thinking. In this class, we do a lot of brain games. We do some logic puzzles because it's kind of like yoga. You have to practice, right? You have to stretch those muscles in weird ways in order to be able to do the poses in yoga. Critical thinking is the same thing. You have to look at what you have and what's missing, and from what you have, can you put it together and come to a conclusion? So that's an example of some of the brain games. I think I completely screwed that up because I've done it so many times that I kind of got stage fright, telling you, just to be honest. Okay, let's continue forward. So thinking outside the box, that's what we want to do. When you get an assignment or a project from your supervisor, or if you're in a supervisor role, when you give a project or an assignment, is there anything missing? Most of the time there is, right? Because when a supervisor gives us a project, they haven't thought it all the way through. They're getting it out of their inbox and into yours so you can start working on it. Is there anything missing? What do you do with that? Do you go, oh gosh, I guess I'm supposed to know this? Or do you seek answers? Do you ask questions? How do you handle it? Do you get frustrated, or do you look at that as an opportunity to gather information? How can you be proactive and get the information early on instead of working through your possible scenarios and coming up with your conclusion only to realize that you didn't understand the assignment? So it goes back to asking questions. How you ask those questions is very important. If your arms are crossed, your eyes are rolled, and you're like, well, once again, you didn't give me everything I need, that's going to be one experience. If you say, I really want to be able to do this project complete and on time, there's a few bits of information that I still need. Tell me about this. Help me understand that. Gather the information, put it together, and then you can dive in through critical thinking. The tool that I dive deep into in this is called the 6 Thinking Hats by Edward de Bono, and he was a great critical thinker. And this model I've used with staff retreats. I've used it with labor management retreats where you've got management and you've got the union reps and everyone comes in like this and no one's talking, walking through the 6 thinking hats. They actually understand each other, and it forces your hand at thinking critically. So what those 6 hats are, I'll just give you a quick preview here. Each hat, it represents a different phase of critical thinking. So the white hat is data, information. At this point, you're just getting information. The red hat is the emotion. How does it make you feel when you experience this problem? You let all the emotion come out, good, bad, or ugly. Then you move to the black hat, which is kind of black hat thinking, devil's advocate. What are the threats? What are the challenges? What could possibly go wrong? From there, and it's kind of like a bell curve, like the information, everyone gets excited because you're actually making data-driven decisions. And then it tanks when you use the red hat for emotion and the black hat for devil's advocate. And then you bring it back up with the yellow hat, which is optimistic thinking, right? What is the good in this decision? What could possibly come of it? And then the green hat is your creativity, right? Your brainstorming session, your ability to say, what if we did this? Would this be possible? How could we do that? What are the possible ways we can solve this problem? And then the blue hat is the facilitator, the person who's keeping things moving along, reading the group and determining when you move on from one hat to the next. You can use this process as an individual. I think it's even more effective if you use it with a team of people, an intact team, where everyone, this is the key part, with the 6 thinking hats, everyone wears the white hat at the same time. Then everyone wears the emotional red hat. Everyone looks at the devil's advocate at the same time, and then everyone is forced to contribute to what's going well. It's kind of like a SWOT analysis, but a more fun way to go through that process. And then everyone puts on their brainstorm hat. What happens when you do this is it takes the person who is very data driven and it forces them to see things from other points. It takes the person who's really hot and fired up about an issue and it forces them to look at the facts. It takes the person who always is the glass half empty and forces them to look at it also from the glass half full. And then everyone to be in tune and involved in generating those possible solutions with the green hat. It's an awesome tool. At some point, you might have to circle back. If something comes up, you come up with a great idea with the green hat and you're like, we don't have any data on that. Let's circle back and wear the white hat for a minute and see what we've got. So it's a great process that you can work through quite quickly, or you could spend an entire day doing a staff retreat, working through actual problems with the 6 thinking hats. Big fan of it. We dive deep in critical thinking tools. So really, critical thinking is about this. It's better to go slowly in the right direction rather than quickly in the wrong direction. We've tweaked critical thinking into several different offerings because most people are learning virtually these days. We have a 1-day introduction course. We have a 1.5-day hybrid where the afternoon of the first day is actually done independently with the facilitator being able to answer questions and contribute, bounce things off, but people actually go and do that first half a day on their own, and then they come back together for the second part the next morning. And then we have a 2-day deep dive. Sometimes they're back-to-back days. Did one this week where day 1 was this Tuesday and day 2 is next Tuesday. What I think is great about this critical thinking is you can actually bring an intact team together and they can solve real problems. And when they leave the training, they actually have a roadmap for how to move forward. So that really wraps up critical thinking. I hope you got a little bit out of those 3 tips. Again, to review, control what you can, be proactive instead of reactive, and think differently. Wear those different hats and really look at things from different perspectives. It will help you to produce better work and be more critical in the way that you're thinking. I'm Becky Lunders. I appreciate this opportunity to share this with you, and I will check the chat in case anyone has any questions. I'll stay on if you have questions.
Yeah, we'll give it a few minutes here. I know we're at times. We want to be respectful of everyone's time. I wanted to thank you, Becky, for a fantastic presentation. I loved how actionable your tips were, and hopefully people can walk away today with something they can use. So if you have any questions, we'll hang out for a few minutes here and wait for those questions and watch the chat. Again, I mentioned that the slides and video will be available. I put the link in the chat. Hopefully you saw it there. If not, you can go to the CPS HR website and find it in the webinar section. I don't see anything. I think you're good to go. Thank you.
All right, everybody have a great weekend.
Yeah, have a great weekend.
Thank you.